Since we've been able to resume Mass in May, I think one of the most difficult parts of celebrating Mass, for me anyway, is preaching. And a big piece of that is because of, well, everyone wearing a mask. I have to be honest, one of the ways I preach is by responding to people. And I do. I kind of watch the body language and facial expressions, and that helps me to know sort of, what I'm saying, does it make sense? Is it connecting with people? And the fact that people have masks on their face makes it really hard to know if that connection is being made. It's hard to really read people's reactions to what it is that I'm saying. And so it's made preaching that much more difficult. And really sort of how we go about reading things, particularly in our relationship with God. Many times I think we can kind of feel like we're in that same position. How do we read what it is that God wants us to do? As we're talking to God, how do we understand sort of what God's expectations are? Is God getting what we're saying? Are we really understanding what God is saying? And as we sort of work through that struggle, we can almost feel like, well, God has a mask on. We can't really read his expression. And so it makes it really hard to really figure out sort of what to do. And I can say, in my own life, as I've run into those situations, into those moments in my relationship with God, because I'll be honest, I have. What really has gotten me through it, well, it's some very simple things. And one of the most important is sort of what we're celebrating right now in Advent. We're celebrating the fact that Jesus is coming again. And we're remembering at the same time that Jesus came. And when I sort of get lost and not 100% sure what it is that God wants, what is God expecting of me, I kind of remember what it is both God has done and what God has promised. And that reminds me really of sort of God's expectations. What has God done? Well, he came. He came to be one with us. Every time I think about the reality of the incarnation, that God humbled himself, and again, always remember that our God is a God of humility, that God humbled himself to become one with us. And in Advent, we are preparing to celebrate that act of humility on Christmas. That act of humility that would set up our salvation. The fact that Jesus would die on the cross and rise from the dead. And so the season of Advent is that reminder of God's plan. But what God had to do to make that plan possible. As he came to unite himself with us in our humanity in the person of Jesus Christ. But Advent also reminds us of the promise. The promise that he is going to be coming again. That he is going to give himself to us once more. And that promise, I know, will be fulfilled for the simple reason because what he already did. what we remember is preparing us to wait for that moment when God will fulfill his promise once more. And so, in a real sense, what we are celebrating sort of removes God's mask. What is his expectation of us? Simply to do what he did, to humble ourselves, to give ourselves in love for others, to open ourselves to the plan of salvation. That's ultimately what this season is, which is why it's a season of hope, why it's a season of joy, and a season of wonder. Sometimes we think God has a mask on, and he really never does. We just simply have to look and really understand what God means. God bless.